it's time to take a moment and let's do a little evaluation of why fandom is kind of in the situation it's in right now with all the crap going on with Vic and Captain Marvel and the Discovery and the Comics Gate, even going back now, and Gamergate. You know. If you think about society as it is right now, we're actually doing pretty damn good. We've learned a lot of lessons. You know, institutionalized racism is essentially ancient history. Okay, yeah, you're still some races out there, but you no longer have segregated, you know, lunch counters. You know, whites only bathrooms, stuff like that. You know, we're doing debating anti-lynching legislation. It's like, what's next? Buggy whip regulation? It's like, come on. When was the last time there was any big rash of lynchings? And you want to get picky? That's been illegal since the founding of the country. It's called murder, which has never been allowed. Okay? It's like, the thing is, you got a certain set of people. Their whole lives are built around fighting the ills of society. And they're kind of find themselves in a situation where those ills have pretty much been resolved. And they're struggling to find something else to do now. Gay rights is pretty much the law of the land, though. So what do you do after that point? Transgenders. Just kind of, you know, ignore the fact that we're doing like less than 1% of the population, and they're trying to act like it's a big, rapid problem, and really it isn't, okay? I mean, not to disparage the people who are going through this sort of thing, but it's not, you know, it doesn't need to be, you know, dealt with, you know, it's the old thing of like trying to kill a cockroach with a sledgehammer, you know? You need to take these things, you know, a little more nuanced here, okay? Otherwise, you just pretty much insult everybody, and, you know, on both sides. It just makes a mess, and that's what we're getting right now. Is got people who all they know how to do is rabble-rouse for a cause. Then they'll latch onto any cause at this point because all the big causes have been taken and solved, you know? It's like, you know, remember, those of you who weren't around, what happened, you know, protests in the Vietnam War, war's over. Now what do? Because their whole thing was to get us out of the war. And once we're out of the war, they were like, and in that case, I think we wound up with you know, disco, which is an ironic situation. But I think, you know, they've learned it's okay. Well, you know, you move on to the next cause. And if there is no next cause, you create a next cause. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to end up making up out of whole cloth. You got to find somebody to turn into the demon here. With Harvey Weinstein, it was easy because everyone knew he was a creep and a thug and a bum and, you know, and a pervert. I mean, Seth MacFarlane cracking a joke. Congratulations, ladies, you no longer have to pretend to be attracted to Harvey Weinstein. It was known he was doing it, and it was nothing new when Harvey was doing it. It's been going on for, you know, for as long as there's been a Hollywood. You can probably trace it back to, you know, vaudeville, you know. In fact, I think it's probably why back in Shakespeare's day, why women were not allowed in the theater. Because that's what happened. Oh, you want this part, lady? Yeah. Descend upon my shaft, fair maiden. Yeah. But after they've done that, and, you know, we're talking witch hunts all the time. Let's talk about what happened with the Salem witch hunts. One, I don't think any actual witches were actually caught there. It was all, you know, get back at them. It started off, and I think, you know, some research over the years, throughout the years in Europe, and when kind of piecing, it's circumstantial, but it's like figured that rye grain was the big thing. Well, rye grain gets a little moldy. It produces really LSD. It's on the top there, you know. It's like, you know, because, and people, they take the top of it and they'll make the bread, and you've got, you know, acid bread, which if they'd known about in the 60s would have been a big thing, you know. Not to dig a little drops. Here, have a sandwich. But they'd freak out. They wouldn't know what's going on. So the only answer they can figure out is demonic possession. Someone's a witch. You, ugly one in the corner. It must be you. You know? And then apparently that's probably what started things off in Salem, because another way things kept, they had the rye grain, they got the moldy, that went wacky. But these girls who had the little thing apparently figured, hey, they're listening to us. We can use this to get a little payback on, and pretty soon the list of witches started expanding. They weaponized it. And a lot of people died for the simple fact of, oh yeah, that bitch who stepped on my dress last week, she's a witch. And it finally got to the point where now you're taking on, the lieutenant governor's wife or whatever, or however far it got, to finally someone say, okay, that's it. Shut it down, And I think now we're reaching that point now where someone finally say, that's enough, okay? You all gone too far. Like Gamergate finally reached that point. I think they're still dealing with it for the most part, but it's the same sort of thing, and people rabble-rousing, causing problems, trying to get some payback for other things, and involving people who really don't care, who are just trying to go about their lives. With Gamergate, it was like these guys, largely apolitical people. And even those that did have the politics on one side, they're going to the games to get away from this. And same thing with comics and sci-fi. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're, hardcore socialist or Goldwater Republican, you're playing the games like, I don't give a crap right now, just tell me which castle I gotta get to and kill the dragon and rescue the princess. They want to check out for a while to decompress. And that's also one of the reasons why people get so pissed off at this sort of thing, because now they're forcing these stuff into the entertainment, into the games, into the comics, into the movies. And, trying to get away from, I know, going to conventions sometimes, there was, go to the and try and get, de-stressful. And a real life issue was brought in because people we were there with the convention, owed them some money. And they kind of playfully made a game of it, but it did not go over well because, no, that stuff stays outside. You don't bring it to the con, And same thing here, it's like, even, if it's something I particularly agree with, a lot of people, if it's something that people largely agree with, they don't want to hear about it in their comic book or the game or in their movies. It's like, And also there's the factor of, especially nowadays, you're dealing with people who are not native fans to that. That's why, as far as, the gatekeeping charge, we're not against new fans. We're mainly about people pretending to be fans who are only there to, get their agenda rolling. I think, and that's where we really get into the Gamergate thing, because these are not gamers. And the comics, these are not comic book readers. They're not fans of science fiction, not Star Trek fans or Doctor Who fans. They're there to try and inject this stuff to continue their little cultural information agenda. And kind of not taking account, especially genre fans especially, are generally the most open-minded, tolerant, welcoming people around. And you're lecturing to them about stuff that they already accepted as fact and a given long before you even heard of this stuff. Sonequa Martin Green talking about diversity. Trekkies invented the diversity concept for the most part. That was one of the foundations of Star Trek to begin with, was the diverse cast, and bringing in Nichelle Nichols and George Takei and having a multiracial cast. So for her to come in and start telling us about, excuse me? Do you know who you're talking to, lady? Take it somewhere else. We want to see a good show, all right? Learn who you're talking to. I keep telling, like Steph all the time, spout out about something. I said, know your audience before you start doing this stuff, okay? But it's like, you don't try and lecture Star Trek fans about Star Trek when you don't know about Star Trek, and you're like, excuse me, you missed this part back here. And kind of a slightly more, when they're making Smallville. And they brought in another tool, and that's how familiar she was with Superman. Besides the fact that she was in Superman 3, played Lana, Lang. She also had been a Superman fan since a girl. So they suddenly felt like they were doing, scripture readings with a nun. Like, okay. Never mind. You're perfect. You're hired. And that's kind of where we're here. Now, and that's kind of goes more to the lack of quality in Discovery in particular, where they're making sightings and references. Oh, yes, Thomas Four. And Rob Burnett brought this up. A Tribble on Lorca's desk. We're supposed to go, oh, look, a Tribble. Isn't that cute? And you got a Tribble next to a bowl of fortune cookies, a food source. Tribbles are ravenous eaters, and you know what happens when you feed a Tribble too much? You get a whole bunch of hungry little Tribbles. Why was he not hip deep in Tribbles by the 3rd episode? They don't think that far through. That's the operating phrase for that entire series. They never think things through. They throw out a reference and don't go into the implications of it. They never think, what does this actually mean? Why is this, why is they doing this? Why is this planning? They, in the last week, I forgot to mention in my review of Light and Shadow, whatever that was. Michael Burnham is flying low level between the buildings on some Vulcan city, supposedly Shikar, assuming they didn't even bother to look that up. And only then is she being contacted by Vulcan Space Central. Please identify yourself. They should have done that when she was in freaking orbit. And only by the time she's down there and treetop level, then they bothered to ask her? That's the kind of lack of attention to detail we're dealing with here, people. And that's what feeds in the whole thing of why we're so pissed off here. Again, it's not, we don't want new fans. We want people who know what the hell they're doing. Because like something Rob says, if your first Bond film was, View to a Kill, first one says, I'm sorry. If this is your first exposure to Star Trek as Discovery, I'm sorry. This is a very poor representation of the show. In the case of assuming it's still available on Netflix, because all the shows are available on CBS All Access. It's like, please. It's a very short trip from there to look at the original series, animated. Watch them. You'll see why we're so irritated. Because they have taken a very literate, thought-provoking, series of set of shows and dumbed them down to pablum, and not even good pablum. They used to have scientific advisors on the show. For the most part, during the Next Gen series, it was Andrei Bormanis. He's now on Orville. That's why Orville is now doing things right. And most of the writers are over on Orville too. And even the original series, they didn't necessarily have one on staff, but they had them on, they had them on the Rolodex. They had people over at RAND and at other think tanks, who they'd call up and have, and the DeForest, Kevin DeForest, they would research this stuff for them. And they're the ones who, they're the ones who caught that in Devil in the Dark. Originally, the creature was not silicon based. And one of the behind the scenes things, they forget what it was, but it was wrong. It wasn't. So they looked at and said, here's silicon. Some people talk about silicon based life as a possibility. So they went with that. That's the sort of thing they used to do back then. I don't think they're even bothering to open up an encyclopedia to look this stuff up to see any kind of base. Why the hell else would you have this fixation with sonar in space? Sound does not travel in space. You can look utter morons every time you do stuff like that, guys. So yeah, it's a very complicated issue. But I think it's like you got people who they're not interested in the material at hand. They're interested in pushing an agenda. And it's obvious when they're doing that. And like the old saying goes, you want to send a message, call Western Union. Meanwhile, get the hell out of our fandom because you're not helping. You're making things worse. And don't presume to, they're kind of coming at the assumption that, all the ills and the evils of the world are still upon. It's like they're acting like it's still the 1920s and the Klan are still marching down the streets, in their full robes. I mean, if in Denver, it'd be like they're still holding cross burnings at Inspiration Point in Lakewood. It's like, please, look around you, people. This whole thing, it kind of goes with thinking that history starts with them. Open a book. Take a look at what it used to be like. Again, grew up in Denver, so that's my frame of reference here. Once upon a time, the Klan owned the state of Colorado. Several representatives and maybe a governor or two, okay? They would hold marches right down 16th Street. Again, a big, long, thing, with the robes and everything. You don't see that anymore, do you? Same thing, you don't have a rash of lynchings anymore. If nowadays you have a lynching, to make the national news because it's so rare. And nobody be out there supporting it either. No one in their right mind. So I just like to see, if you're addressing a legitimate issue, concern, acknowledge the progress that's been made. I mean, the whole thing, like, say the wage gap, the gender wage gap, it's largely myth. Because they're not comparing job to job. They're talking averages, and on average, men and women don't have the same fields. But when you have women and men in the same field, they're generally getting paid within $1 of each other as far as their wages are compared. What they're doing, they're comparing, like, a male CEO to a female, meter maid. And look at the disparity. Well, yeah, it's a different kind of job. And also just totally ignoring the fact that equal pay for equal work has been the law of the land at least since 1962, when JFK signed it into law. And they come along and say, it's never been addressed before. Bull, has never been addressed before. It's been addressed 50 years ago. And it's like this anti-lynching law. It's never been legal in the first damn place. And suddenly it's like, oh, look at that. That happened back in the 30s. Where the hell have you been? They don't do that anymore. So I think we're really dealing with, and it's also why this is different. Like, okay, I gotta do something here. A chiropractor for different things. Okay, so that's pretty much where we're at here. This isn't just, fans not liking the change in a new show, though. This is different. This is a whole new group coming in trying to force something in that doesn't work. Across the board, it's the mandates from BBC, try and change Doctor Who into something else. Whatever the hell they did with The Last Jedi, and the crap going on with Discovery, and with the comics, things about trying to turn them into propaganda pieces for whatever, people. I just want a good story on all these things, the games and everything. So, and again, people don't like being lectured to normally, but especially not when they're wanting to sit down and watch a movie. You want to deliver a message, you got to be subtle, but you got to be a decent writer and know what you're doing. You don't just stick it on there and say, this is what you believe. No. PayPal, Patreon down below. We will catch you later.